Hello everyone. This is the 34th part of the story, Blade God of Blood, Chapter 67 Destroyer. Why is there such a strong person on the earth? The Frost Giant Commander and Loki, who was peeking from Asgard, were stunned. This was completely beyond their imagination. Come with me and stop him! The Frost Giant Commander gritted his teeth and led a group of Frost Giants to rush over. Seeing this, Bert directly changed the target to them. Make icebergs! When the Frost Giant Commander saw the firelight change direction, he immediately gathered the power of everyone to condense an iceberg full of spikes. This human is indeed very powerful, but he also has weaknesses, and he cannot easily change his direction. Why do I need to change direction? Bert gave a grim smile, smashed the iceberg abruptly, and pierced out from behind the Frost Giant's commander. The Frost Giant Commander turned his head in disbelief, and then, like everyone else, split his body in two and fell to the ground whimpering. At the same time, that iceberg quickly melted and turned into water vapor. That's all! Bert laughed and controlled the Qilong to chase down the Frost Giants frantically. The Frost Giants completely collapsed, everyone was running away, and they didn't dare to fight back at all. Destroy them! Don't let them escape! Coulson hurriedly shouted, and the agents agreed excitedly. With such a strong man fighting with them, what is a Frost Giant? At this moment, an agent using a computer to monitor the surroundings suddenly shouted, "Sir, a powerful energy is coming!" Before the agent could finish speaking, a colorful beam of light descended from the sky and slammed in the direction where the Frost Giants fled. Thor was stunned for a moment, then turned to Jane and shouted excitedly, "Jane, this is our Asgard's Bifrost Bridge!" "This is the Bifrost Bridge? The Einstein-Rosen Bridge wormhole?" Jane's eyes brightened, and she hurriedly ran to the computer to calculate the data. At this moment, the colorful light disappeared, and 4 figures appeared on the ground, but they were Thor's subordinates, the Warriors 3 of Asgard, and Lady Sif. "Thor, we're here to help you kill the Frost Giants!" The fat, bearded Volstagg roared and chopped down a Frost Giant with an axe. The other 3 also greeted Thor and joined the battle. "You are here!" Thor was overjoyed, picked up a weapon, and rushed out. Coulson couldn't stop it at all. He couldn't help but shake his head. This prince is reckless. Tony sneered unhappily. "You guys are efficient, almost like the American police." Everyone laughed secretly. Who didn't know that the police would always come after the fact? "It's still not here. It's troublesome." Seeing Thor's subordinates appear, Bert frowned and controlled the horse to return to the farm. Then, he put away the flame, turned over and dismounted, and said to Coulson, "Coulson, prepare for a decisive battle, and let the agents evacuate the townspeople." Coulson was puzzled. "Mr. Wong, haven't we already won?" Bert pointed to the 3 warriors of Asgard and the goddess Sif over there, and said, "What these 4 people bring is not victory, but destruction." After finishing speaking, Bert did not explain to Coulson, and shouted to Frank and the others, "Frank, come back and load the ammunition. Tony, War Machine, Peacemaker, you should rest immediately." "Okay." Frank and Tony had no opinion, but Rhodes and Rumlow hesitated. Coulson shouted, "Listen to Mr. Wang's command." "Okay." The 2 agreed and quickly came back to rest. Bert took out his mobile phone and called Ivan and asked, "Are you here yet?" "Already at the nearby airport, coming over immediately." Ivan said, "Bert, you were good just now, but why don't you use the silver sports car?" Bert said, "Everyone has different talents. Damon is good with machinery, and I am good with life." "I see." Ivan asked, "Hey, wait, you are good with life? Can you also transform other humans?" Bert said, "It should be possible, but I have to first study whether there are any sequelae. Qilong has been significantly more active recently." Ivan said, "That's true. I hope that the enemy who will come later will not let me down. I want that sissy to know what a real man is. I think you two should just stay together." Bert hung up the phone angrily. At the same time, Thor, Warriors 3, and Sif reconciled. Sif said straight to the point. Thor, we are here to take you back to Asgard. Thor said disappointedly. I can't go back, I killed my father. Sif was stunned. What did you say? When did the God King die? What, father isn't dead? Thor was taken aback. Even with his brain capacity, he realized that something was wrong. At this moment, another colorful beam of light fell from the sky, and someone from Asgard came again, and the drop point was the center of the town. Kill Thor, kill those humans who dare to help Thor! Loki shouted frantically. Gatekeeper Heimdall was standing beside him, but he was frozen. The enemy is coming! Bert and others hurriedly flew towards the drop point of the colorful beam of light. Soon, the colorful light disappeared. The destroyer, with a height of more than 5 meters, made of Yaru metal, appeared in everyone's sight. Everyone was shocked, and the area where the destroyer appeared was still not evacuated, and those people were getting into the car. When the destroyer saw the target, it immediately opened the visor, and the fire inside soared. Then, a high-temperature beam with the thickness of a bucket erupted from its face, instantly blowing up a car, and all the people on it were turned to ashes. This is not over yet. The destroyer turned its head, the high-temperature beams shot all the way, the cars rumbled and exploded one after another, and a large number of townspeople died tragically. Fuck! Seeing this, everyone was furious, and Tony directly started the miniature missile to shoot at the destroyer. The destroyer didn't evade, and the missile banged on it, but when the flames and black smoke disappeared, everyone's expressions changed, because the destroyer was unscathed. The destroyer turned his head and fired a high-temperature beam at Tony, and Tony quickly avoided it. The high-temperature beam hit the house behind, directly shooting through the house, and a raging fire was burning at the edge. Frank shouted, "You can't fight here, there will be a lot of casualties." Bert thought for a while, turned around and flew back, then grabbed Thor, who was running towards the side, and shouted, "Thor, I'll take you to a safe place." Naturally, Loki would not allow Thor to escape, and immediately ordered the destroyer to chase after him, and everyone quickly followed. This is the strength of Asgard. Looking at the town that turned into a sea of fire, made Coulson almost bleeds from his clenched fist, and quickly ordered the agents to save people. Bert, put me down, you can't beat the destroyer. If Loki wants to kill me, let him kill me, I can't implicate you. Thor shouted in incomparable pain and self-reproach, and the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif who followed behind were shocked. How could Thor be so self-reproach for mortals? This is completely different from his previous behavior. Before, Thor never cared how many people, let alone mortals, would die to win. They don't know that Thor has learned what responsibility is. Let's fight it first. As for your brother Loki, I will settle the account with him. Bert said bitterly. He deliberately chose the battlefield on the farm, just to avoid casualties. He never thought that Loki would be so mad and order the destroyer to kill everyone. This guy with a super high hairline is annoying. Bert saw that the distance was far enough. He threw him on the ground, turned around, and shouted to Tony and the others. Delay it for a while, the killer I prepared will come soon. My Iron Man is only worthy of delaying for time? Tony was very dissatisfied, as were the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif. They turned around and fought the destroyer. The first to rush up was the bearded Volstagg. He jumped high and slashed at the destroyer with an axe. The destroyer punched him with a backhand and smashed him out. Seeing this, the other 2 warriors were furious and rushed up together, but they were quickly sent flying like Volstagg. Asgard is nothing more than that. Tony was very disdainful and rushed up to activate the cluster cannon on his chest. Even the destroyer was bombarded back. But that's all. The destroyer mecha quickly stabilized, and then it opened the visor, and a high-temperature beam blasted toward Tony. Tony hurried to dodge. Frank saw this, and immediately sent a few missiles to the head of the destroyer. The destroyer changed the attack target to Frank. Frank was dodging and shooting frantically. War Machine and Peacemaker also joined the battle to contain the big guy. It seems that the Earthlings also have warriors. Seeing this, the 3 warriors of Asgard got up and fought together. Sif also wanted to do it, but looked at Thor and chose to stay by his side. At this time, several F-22 fighter jets suddenly flew into the sky, but it was the military's support. The White House and the military paid attention to this battle from the very beginning. After all, this was an alien invasion. Blow it up! The general in charge of the operation ordered the fighter jets. They fired missiles one after another, and the destroyer failed to escape because it was restrained by Tony and the others, and was hit by several missiles one after another. Yes! The command base cheered for a while, but it turned out that they were too happy. A thick high-temperature beam spurted out of the fire, instantly blowing up a fighter jet. Immediately afterward, the huge body of the destroyer slowly walked out of the flame. As it walked, it shot a high-temperature beam at another fighter jet. Although the fighter jet tried its best to avoid it, its left wing was still destroyed, and the jet slanted toward the ground. Bump! The fighter pilot immediately ejected from the cockpit, and the jet crashed into the ground with a bang. Damn! The remaining fighters, leave the battlefield and hunt down the fleeing frost giants. The general smashed the table angrily. The flexibility of the fighter jet was too low to avoid the attack of the destroyer. Many high-level officials watching the battle thought to themselves, "It seems that the world of battle armors will be the world in the future, and we need to increase investment." Seeing all the fighter jets flying away, Tony complained, "What are they here for? To travel? Tony, focus on fighting." As Rhodes said, he shot the destroyer with a machine gun, hoping to attract its attention. Tony shouted at Bert dissatisfied, "Hey Bert, what are you waiting for? Quickly pick up your 81-pound spear and join the battle." "I'm waiting for Ivan," Bert said, and at the same time asked Coulson and the others to bring the box containing the vibranium spear. Tony sneered, "Ivan? What's the use of him? He's not as good as me." "You are a sissy yourself, don't think that others are also sissy." Ivan's sneering sound came from the sky, and then, a huge black shadow fell from the sky and landed on the ground with a bang, raising a lot of dust. Everyone turned their heads and took a breath. It was a giant battle armor more than 3 meters high. It held a shield on the left and an axe on the right. It looked so ferocious. What's even more shocking is that there are 6 arc reactors on the giant armor, and Tony couldn't help shouting, "Madman, do you want to die? 6 arc reactors, once activated, you will immediately become meat sauce." Ivan descended from the sky in battle armor, and said with a sneer, "Idiot, I'm here, it's not me inside." Tony froze for a moment, then asked, "Who's in there?" "Abomination." Ivan grinned and said, "Sissy, I'll let you know now, what is a man, Abomination, attack. Kill." War Abomination let out a roar and rushed towards the destroyer. The destroyer sensed the threat, turned around, and a high-temperature beam blasted towards the Abomination. Abomination raised the large shield to resist. Although he was pushed all the way to slide backward, the high-temperature beam failed to break through the shield's defense. It was blocked. "Vibranium shield, how much vibranium do you have?" Tony said sourly that he once went to the black market to buy vibranium, but found that the guy who sold it was missing. He now deeply suspects that the guy was blackmailed by Bert. Bert waved his hand as if chasing flies and said, "Some poor ghost who can't even afford vibranium. Go away, don't delay me from watching the battle." Poor ghost? This is the first time in Tony's life that he has been called this way, and he gritted his teeth in anger. He swears that one day he will return this name to that bastard. While Bert and Tony were talking, War Abomination stopped abruptly with the impetus of the battle armor. He slowed down, turned to avoid the high-temperature beam, and then jumped hard toward the destroyer. The destroyer raised his head and wanted to emit a high-temperature beam. War Abomination smashed the shield of his left hand into the opponent's head. With a bang, the destroyer's head was smashed, and could not attack. Taking this opportunity, War Abomination raised the axe in both hands and slashed the destroyer's chest with an axe force. Even the destroyer was cut into a wound, and the fire flashed inside. Success! Everyone couldn't help being overjoyed, but the destroyer slammed the head of the War Abomination with a nonchalant punch, and the War Abomination fell to the ground. What's even more amazing is that with the flash of fire, the URU metal that was split in the destroyer's chest healed quickly. Can this mecha heal itself? Bert was a little surprised. This feature was not available in the movie. War Abomination turned over to avoid Destroyer's big feet, then got up from the ground and attacked the Destroyer with an axe again. A blast hit the Destroyer's face. The armor designed by Ivan will naturally not only have melee functions. Taking this opportunity, War Abomination slashed the Destroyer's shoulder with an axe, trying to remove its entire arm. The idea of War Abomination is very good, but it still fails, because after the axe cuts through the URU metal, it is subjected to a strong repulsive force, and it can no longer be cut at all. At this time, the Destroyer had recovered, and the huge fist slammed into the War Abomination, and the War Abomination let go of the axe, fell back, and then activated the pusher, and his feet slammed into the Destroyer's calf. The Destroyer fell to the ground with a thud, and the War Abomination rose to his feet, riding on it and beating it hard. Chapter 68 God of Hammer. Amazing! Seeing that the War Abomination and the Destroyer fighting toe-to-toe, and Abomination even has the upper hand, everyone is amazed. Even Tony has to admit that this War Abomination is not something he can match, and the two sides are not at the same level. Of course, Tony didn't mean to admit defeat. The core of War Abomination is the monster, Abomination, not armor. When did the humans of Midgard become so powerful? Can they compete with the Destroyer? Sif looked unbelievable. The last time she came to Earth, humans knelt in front of her and called her the goddess of harvest. Humans are indeed stronger than we think. Thor nodded first and then said, "However, this is not the real strength of the Destroyer. If it is controlled by my father, its combat power can be increased by at least dozens of times." Boasting. When Tony heard this sentence, he secretly disdained, but Bert knew that what Thor said was true, and Loki could not exert the true strength of the Destroyer at all. On the Bifrost Bridge, Loki looked at everything that happened on the Earth and gritted his teeth secretly. It seems that it is impossible to kill Thor with the Destroyer. For this purpose, I should do another thing first. What's up? Very simple, lure Laufey to Asgard, kill him, and blow up Jotunheim with the Bifrost Bridge. He, Loki, is the prince of Asgard, not the damn, poor, backward, filthy, disgusting prince of Jotunheim. Leaving aside Loki's thoughts, for the time being, the performance of the War Abomination has satisfied the high-level officials in the United States. A general said, "The $1.5 billion spent is very worthwhile. The Oscorp is not bad, very good. It's good." Everyone nodded, and the best thing was that the Oscorp gave them a way to control the Abomination, so there was no need to worry that the War Abomination would backfire. At this moment, a gray-haired old man suddenly said, "A single War Abomination is not enough." Everyone understood, and nodded in unison. It's not enough. On the battlefield, the Destroyer overturned the War Abomination and stood up again, and Bert shouted to the others in dissatisfaction, "Hey, don't watch the show there, the War Abomination has not been finished yet, there will be problems at any time, you guys come together and defeat the Destroyer as soon as possible. Things made by lunatics are unreliable." Tony snorted and joined the battle, as did the others. Although they couldn't break the Destroyer's defense, they were more than enough as a restraint, and the Destroyer soon began to fall behind. The problem is that the Destroyer can heal itself. If you don't solve this problem, you can't destroy it at all. That's why Bert didn't do anything with the vibranium spear. Bert asked Thor, "Thor, how to destroy this mecha?" Thor replied, "The Destroyer's recovery depends on divine power. As long as the core of divine power is broken, the Destroyer can be destroyed. Bert's eyes lit up and asked, "Where is the core of divine power?" Thor sighed. "The core of divine power is not fixed, it keeps moving on the destroyer. You mortals can't sense it, and neither can I." "So troublesome?" Bert frowned greatly. "Do you have to turn Thor into Thor in order to destroy the destroyer? The question is, in this situation, how to let the destroyer kill Thor? You can't kick Thor with one kick, can you?" At the same time, Odin, who pretended to be sleeping in Asgard, was seeing the situation on Earth and frowned. The script was wrong. Why was the destroyer pressed and beaten by humans? If this goes on, when will Thor wake up? Time is running out. Odin raised his finger slightly, intending to add some strength to the destroyer. At this moment, he sensed that there was a pair of eyes on the earth looking at him, and immediately put his finger down. The eyes looked at him for a while before slowly moving. "This is a warning." "Ancient One!" Odin sighed secretly. The earth was once a vassal of Asgard, so the Ancient One allowed Asgard to move on the earth, but only for petty troubles. If he did too much, the Ancient One would never stand by. Odin is not afraid of Ancient One, but he doesn't want to fight Ancient One, because that woman is not easy to deal with. Since that's the case, there's only one way to do it. It feels a bit anticlimactic. Odin tapped his finger, and Thor's hammer on earth suddenly vibrated violently. Without waiting for the surrounding agents to do anything, the hammer flew up by itself, turning into a lightning bolt and disappearing into the sky. "What's the situation?" Thor looked at Mjolnir, which had suddenly returned to his hand, with a confused expression on his face. Not only he but Bert was also stunned. What was the situation? Why did Thor not die and the hammer flew over by itself? "This script is wrong, director." Thor suddenly reacted. This was his father's approval of him, and excitedly shouted to the sky, "Father!" Bert scratched his head a little. Thor likes to call his father. When can he change it? It's embarrassing, isn't it? Whether it's Thor or Loki, they're dads who have lived for thousands of years. "Haha, Bert and Jane, my father has recognized me, and I've regained my powers." Thor held up Thor's hammer and laughed, and then, a flash of lightning flashed. Thor was in battle armor with a red cloak behind him, quite handsome. "Thor!" Sif and others cheered. Their Thor came back. Bert couldn't help but ask, "Thor, why did the hammer suddenly return to your hand?" "I don't know much about this either." Thor is also a little strange. He didn't do anything on Earth. Why did his father suddenly recognize him? Is it because he found a girlfriend? Is he in a hurry to hug his grandson? Oh, it's a bit unreliable. But when I came to Earth myself, I did just one thing in total. Never mind, I'm going to demolish the destroyer. Thor was too lazy to think about it. He slammed the hammer hard at the destroyer, and with a bang, the destroyer stepped back. Thor opened his hand to retract the hammer, and said arrogantly, "Haha, Thor is here." Tony complained, "Where is the male protagonist of Point Break?" Frank glanced at Thor and said, "Looks like you're the god of thunder, you look good." "Haha, Frank, we have a chance to fight again." "All right, get out of the way, leave this to me." Thor spun the hammer and flew into the sky, and then frantically gathered the surrounding thunder and lightning. The sky was soon covered with dark clouds, and the electric snake roamed away. Everyone had a heavy feeling in their hearts as if a world-destroying disaster was about to come. Tony shouted, "Why does the spinning hammer fly? It's unscientific!" "Everyone retreat!" Bert shouted, except Tony. Everyone else followed suit, including War Abomination. Ivan is manipulating him. Tony has always been arrogant. Not only did he not retreat, but he continued to attack the destroyer. He, Tony, was the hero. The destroyer ignored Tony completely. It opened its visor and shot a huge high-temperature beam toward Thor. Thor did not dodge, pulling thousands of lightning bolts together on Mjolnir, and then opened the way with Mjolnir, facing the high-temperature beam all the way, punching it down. The high-temperature beam could not stop Mjolnir at all and was pressed back to the destroyer's head. Then, Thor gathered all the lightning and bombarded the destroyer's divine core. Boom! The destroyer exploded directly in the air, the world was red, and Tony, who was too close, was directly blown away, and rolled on the ground for hundreds of meters before stopping. At the same time, the wreckage of the destroyer fell to the ground like a rain of fire, almost hitting no one. "Frank, Ivan, collect the destroyer, don't miss a piece!" Bert shouted, "This is your metal that contains divine power, and its value is higher than that of vibranium." Odin almost jumped up in anger. The destroyer was created by him with a lot of energy. It was unique and could not be copied. As a result, Thor, the prodigal son, actually blew the destroyer up to show off. Thor didn't know this. He flew proudly in the air and shouted, "Bert, you are indeed very powerful, but I am even more powerful. I'm not as good as you in this aspect of the prodigal." Bert complained, with such a prince, why should Asgard be so worried? Prodigal? Thor was about to say something when Heimdall's anxious voice sounded in his ear. "Thor, come back quickly, Loki is taking Laufey to assassinate King Odin." "What? Heimdall, take us back quickly. Sif, come over here." Thor was shocked, and hurriedly shouted to the three warriors of Asgard and Sif. The four quickly gathered around Thor. Thor remembered something, and shouted to Bert. "Bert, tell Jane, I will be back soon. Go, I will take care of your girlfriend." Bert waved his hand, and the next moment, colorful rays of light fell from the sky, taking all five away, leaving only a mysterious pattern in place. Seeing that Frank and the others were picking up pieces, Coulson hurriedly asked Rumlow to join him. Bert said lightly, "Coulson, the ownership of these fragments belongs to me, and you are not qualified to pick them up." Coulson asked, "Mr. Wang, why do you own these fragments? Shouldn't they belong to the government?" "This thing belongs to Thor's family. Thor is my employee. His things belong to me naturally," Bert said. "Don't be so surprised. When Thor signed the contract, you were there." "That contract? Mr. Wang, you know how to do business." Coulson was speechless and could only stop Rumlow. He said, "Mr. Wang, can you give us some fragments to study? You can't research anything." Bert smiled, turned, and walked to Tony, who climbed out of the battle suit and sneered, "I thought you wouldn't be beaten up this time, but you ended up flying. That scene was deleted, don't broadcast it." Tony lay on the ground and said, "Can't that bastard say a word before he makes a big move? It's you who loves the limelight." Bert threw a bottle of potion to Tony and said, "Drink it, it will relieve the pain in your body." Tony didn't doubt anything and poured the potion directly into his mouth. The whole person felt much better, and he asked, "What happened to that guy? Thor, is there a god in this world? Also, what happened to the frost giants before? Are they aliens?" "There are so many questions," Bert said. "I want to make a Thor documentary film, and I need your authorization." "You film Thor? Will the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. allow it?" Tony was stunned. "Also, why are you filming this? Do I need their permission?" Bert snorted coldly and then said, "I want humans to see the reality of this world." "Aren't you a vampire?" Tony sneered and he said, "Okay, I'll give you the authorization, but the last scene has to be deleted, and the finished film has to be previewed to me first." "Okay." Bert began to introduce. "The one before is the god of thunder in Norse mythology." Tony listened quietly, frowned, and asked, "That is to say, we have to rely on that guy to protect us in the future?" Bert asked. "Would you like to?" "Of course not." "Exactly, I don't want either." Bert and Tony looked at each other and laughed. The fate of the Earth is controlled by their Earth's life. North Pole, Nick Fury, and Peggy Carter looked a bit ugly as they looked at the battlefield that had ended on the screen. "Bert told me that if I saw Thor, I would only have one thought, and that is, Asgard, I am going to die," Director Fury said slowly. "I didn't believe it at the time, but now I believe it. This Thor is unreliable. Humans can only rely on themselves." Carter asked. What does this have to do with Steve? The captain is a spiritual leader. I need him, S.H.I.E.L.D. needs him, humans, and even more. Director Fury said. Ms. Carter, the captain does not belong to you alone. He belongs to all mankind. Steve belongs only to himself. Carter waved her hand tiredly and said, I'll think about it. Okay, I'll wait for your decision. Director Fury nodded and left. Outside the hospital, he took out his phone and dialed Alexander Pierce, the secretary of the World Security Council, and asked, Pierce, what do you think about the war just now? Pierce said in a deep voice, Humans are too weak. Director Fury said, It's too weak. I want to apply for research on the Tesseract. Pierce was silent for a while and said, Next Monday, come and talk to my office. Okay. Director Fury put down the phone and let out a long breath. Ancient One, Mephisto, Odin, Thor, this world is getting more and more unsafe. At this time, Director Fury's phone rang. After he answered, Hawkeye's relieved voice came over. Director, I have been searching for half a year, and finally I found the mouse, Ulysses Klaue. Bring him back to S.H.I.E.L.D. immediately. Director Fury said, If Wakanda has a lot of vibranium and high technology, it may not be a bad thing for human beings. When it was almost dawn, the large army rushed over. They completely blocked the surrounding area of Puente Antiguo, and then sent a large number of troops to search for the fleeing frost giants. Bert had already left on a private jet with immortal. As for the aftermath, Frank was in charge over there. As for Ivan and War Abomination, they left not long after the battle. No matter whether War Abomination itself or its armor, something went wrong. Ivan has to go back to debug. Although there is a small problem, there is no doubt that War Abomination is a success. The military boss is very satisfied, and also implies that the Oscorp will continue to make persistent efforts. URU metal is a magic metal. If I want to forge it, I can only go to Camartage for help. Bert was thinking. When the phone rang, it was Carter who called. Carter asked straight to the point. Blood God, why did you tell S.H.I.E.L.D. about finding Steve? Bert did not deny it. He asked, Ms. Carter, do you think S.H.I.E.L.D. should exist? This marks the end of part 34 of the story, Blade God of Blood. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.